Okay, let's talk about the Purdue Boilermakers. The basketball team, the football team, not notable all year long, barely talked about them. But the basketball team is obviously one of the best in the country and one of the best in the Big Ten. But this week they lost to Penn State on the road. And I want to highlight how difficult it actually is to win games on the road in the Big Ten. You're going to notice very early on in the season how true that is. I would love to pull up the statistics 2 weeks from now as we're deep into Big Ten play and say, okay, how many times did the road team win, right? Across the board. Doesn't matter who's favored, doesn't matter who's playing. How many times did the road team win? I imagine and I bet that the home team in the Big Ten will have won 60% of the games in 2 weeks. It is impossibly difficult. From top to bottom in this conference, it is impossibly difficult to win games on the road in the Big Ten. It's a very difficult early loss for the Boilermakers and a hole that they're going to have now, a deficit in Big Ten play, but it's an acceptable one because I think Penn State's fantastic, and I think that building was very difficult to play in. Especially, I feel okay, especially considering how Purdue held the fort down against Maryland a few days later. It was a tough road environment, right? It was difficult. It was hard. State College is obviously a football town. It's a football school. But that basketball team and that basketball arena certainly has a lot to show for it, and they did have a lot to show for themselves in that game against Purdue. Tough road environment. It's almost impossible to play at peak efficiency on the road in the Big Ten. This was a sloppy game from a team that's not sloppy, and that's why I feel fine. That's why I just take this loss in stride as a lifelong Purdue basketball fan. Even though they go down 18-9 to start after an 11-0 run from Penn State and then never leading after that point, it feels like Purdue is okay, especially because of how they bounced back against Maryland. They scored 83 in that game. Braden Smith bounced back. He had 6 points against Penn State, 24 against Maryland. It's a tough game on the road, a Big Ten opener early on in the season. Purdue has been battle testing very well. They will have played 5 ranked teams by Christmas. It's a tough deficit to start off with in the Big Ten, but they're going to start winning games and they're going to start rolling. And especially as we get into the entire long-term stretch of Big Ten play, Purdue's not going to stop having success. Turnovers might be a long-term issue. That might be something that we need to look at because they had 24 total turnovers, 14 of them in the first half in this game. That led to 32 Penn State points. If an opposing team is scoring 30 to 40% of their points off of turnovers, you're going to start losing because not only are you handing them points, but you're giving up possessions for yourself to score. That the turnovers might be a long-term issue. Penn State's great. I love Penn State, but they're not elite. And when Purdue plays an elite team, when Purdue plays a ranked team, even when Purdue plays a team that's projected to be a surefire top seed or top 8 seed in the NCAA tournament, those turnovers are not going to be. They're just not going to fly. That mark of turnovers, that level of turnovers, is just not going to fly, and it cannot happen. Penn State, though, is great. Penn State, they look strong, fast, athletic, talented, and with that crowd backing them, Penn State proved to me that they're an incredible team. This loss, in my opinion, is going to look better as the year goes on. I think Penn State's going to look better as the year goes on. They'll probably be ranked at least once in the AP poll so far this season. It's a recent tournament team after all, right? They were a 10 seed in the NCAA tournament just a couple years ago. This loss will improve in the vision of it. The perception of this loss will improve as the season rolls on. Purdue just got to take it in stride, continue moving forward. They bounce back against Maryland, and that's exactly as I just said, they need to move forward, just take this in stride, bounce back as soon as possible. They did against Maryland. Mackey Arena gets its turn to flex its muscles. They're the home team in this game, and Purdue wins. Braden Smith is the number one highlight for me. 24 points, 10 assists. He went dark and had only 6 against Penn State. I mentioned that earlier. And the question to me is whether or not Braden Smith is emerging as that pivotal Purdue guard. Purdue recently has been defined by Zach Edey, but prior to his presence as the number one player on this team, Purdue has been defined by some of these elite flashy guards. Carson Edwards, Jaden Ivey, 2 best examples right off the bat. Both were drafted. Carson Edwards now plays in Germany. Jaden Ivey is a leading scorer of the Detroit Pistons right now. He will probably play playoff basketball in the NBA at a high level. Purdue's kind of known for electric guard play across the floor, right? And across the board, that's what they were defined as in terms of what the face of their team was. Then, of course, Zach Edey comes around, so they go to a national championship, and that is sort of redefined. Braden Smith might be that guy this year, the person to carry the team forward in difficult moments. His leadership, his raw ability, his ability to flash in the paint at a given moment indicates that possibility. And the Braden Smith could be for Purdue what I want to see for the Pacers, where you have someone scoring 20 plus, you have someone scoring at least 15 plus in a college game, day after day, week after week, game after game, to where Braden Smith is a large factor for why Purdue's winning games. I'm interested to see if Braden Smith emerges as that presence, because right now he's separating himself from Fletcher Loyer and the rest of the guards. Miles Colvin, Cam Heide, of course, very young. I'm interested to see if Braden Smith can separate himself even further and be that star-defining player for Purdue at the guard position, which is something we haven't seen in a while because we've always had Zach Edey, right? That's what I want to see from the Boilermakers. That's what I want to see from Braden Smith. I want to see if he is that player. We're going to find out if he is that player very, very soon. Number 17, Texas A&M, and number 2, Auburn are next on the schedule. Both of those games are at neutral sites. Texas A&M is in the Indy Classic, though. That game's at Gainbridge, effectively a home game for Purdue. Those are the next 2 games on the schedule, right? Texas A&M and Auburn, both ranked in the top 20, both SEC schools, both awesome. There's a couple more big games early on for the Boilermakers to prove themselves with, right? They have big wins over Bama and Maryland, I consider to be a big win in the Big Ten. They won that game by 5. I've been very impressed with Purdue's early season scheduling. By Christmas, after these 2 games, they will have played 5 ranked opponents, right? Bama, Marquette, Ole Miss, and then Auburn and Texas A&M. Although they've racked up losses, and when I say racked up, I mean like 2. So even though Purdue has lost games, they've won some big ones early on. They have an incredible resume already going into Big Ten play, which is going to bolster it even more, most likely. Purdue's battle testing and passing those tests that they're setting for themselves, which is going to be massively beneficial by the time we get to March. It's palpable how much easier it is for Purdue to win when they're in Mackey Arena, right? A couple weeks ago just proves it. They beat Bama in their home building, then they went to Marquette and lost, right? They did go away from home for the Rady Children's Invitational. They won that. That was great to see, but they were struggling to fight out wins against Ole Miss and some of these other schools. They lose to Penn State, then on the road, then they come home, play Maryland, and they win resoundingly. Purdue's in a great spot. They're putting themselves in a great spot with their ability to win at home and still go into road environments and hopefully be able to take the crown in some of those games there. That's going to be massively beneficial when we get to March. They've battle-tested very well, and it continues this week. So Braden Smith, can he take over against Texas A&M? Can he take over against Auburn? Whether he can or not, that's 2 huge games for Purdue as an entire team where they're going to be able to prove that they deserve to be sitting in the top 5, top 10 of the AP poll and sitting at the top of the sport, even without Zach Edey.